Hello everyone, we are to the last part of the multi-phase flow, and we will talk about the implication of wettability. So one of the most important parts is the oil recovery, primary oil recovery, which changes with the wettability of the rock. If you have a water wet system rock, then you will have more recovery compared to an oil wet rock. So it's kind of obvious from this figure that if you have a water wet rock, the water will stick to the surface of the rock and the oil is free to move. So ultimately you will have higher oil recovery from a water wet system. Now compare it to an oil wet system, which the oil sticks to the surface of the rock and water is free to move, so you will have less oil produced eventually. And another implication is when you do inject water into the system. For example, consider this system. When you do the water flooding, you usually inject water from one well bore and try to increase the recovery from the reservoir. Now let's look at one single pore, and one of these rocks is water wet, another rock is oil wet system, and in both of these rocks you have oil initially in place, and then you're trying to inject water into this pore and to trying to displace the oil from the pore. Now in a water wet system, what happens? The oil doesn't like to stick to the surface. Water have more affinity to be adhered to the surface, and you can see from the interface of water and oil, water is trying to be attach itself to the surface of the rock, right? So it's easy because oil doesn't like the surface, water likes the surface, so water will remove the oil from the pore very easily. However, in an oil wet system, you can see that the oil is trying to adhere to the surface compared to, just compare these two figures at the interface, and you will see that water have a hard time removing oil from the pore. What happens when you push water into the rock, into the pore space? Well, oil like the surface, so this area may be close to the pore wall. They are adhered to the surface of the rock, right? Because oil likes the surface, and then water cannot remove these oils which are attached to the surface of the rock. So what happens is that a process which we call it fingering. So the water will finger through oil and remove this part of the oil, produce that part. However, it cannot remove the oil which is attached to the surface. So this area close to the pore wall cannot be removed by water, and oil and water only can remove the central part of the pore. So your eventual recovery from the water flooding in an oil wet system is less than a water wet system, because water cannot remove those oils who are attached to the surface of the rock. So that's it for this part. Wettability, we kind of covered part of it, and next we will talk about other topic which is still related to multi-phase flow, and you will use the concept of wettability, and we will discuss the relative permeability, we will discuss the capillary pressure in next few weeks.